Welcome to the Purple Political Breakdown. There's not many people talking about the individual responsibilities that content creators have and their impact is currently and moving forward. They influence a lot of people, a lot of young people, and it doesn't seem, in my opinion, at the very least, that any of these content creators are really trying to be the role models that they automatically are and making sure they're putting certain checks and certain barriers in place to ensure that the public's being influenced by them are doing the best they can for society versus just copying them and doing the negative, potentially negative actions or say the negative things or going negative professions that they may be in currently. It's kind of saying, oh, be like me is what it looks like. And obviously, you don't want everybody to be like the content creators that currently exist in society. Do you want a great website like this? This is my podcast website where I direct the audience to come to watch the content, listen to the content, read the blogs, and much, much more. If you want to have your own customizable podcast website, then join my affiliate link in my description to sign up for something called Podpage, and they can help you customize an easy podcast website for your personal podcast. Sign up to get a discount now. Again, use the link in my description to join Podpage now. Are you enjoying today's podcast episode? I really hope you do. And I really hope you enjoy the fact that I have an amazing guest talking with me and having this great discussion. If you, as an individual, personally have your own podcast and maybe you want to have great guests on your podcast as well, I got a deal for you. In my description, there is a link to something called Podmatch. Make sure to join that link through my affiliate link so you can sign up to get matched up with other podcast hosts and podcast guests so you make sure you are never missing an episode without a productive guest to have an amazing conversation with. Podmatch is similar to any other kind of matching site for the most part, and it's super easy to use. Just $6 a month and you can have a guest for each and every podcast episode that is tailored to your specific topic. So again, join the link in my description and join Podmatch now. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode number 40 of the Purple Political Breakdown. Doing great things per usual. Hope you guys have an interesting day today per usual. All that good stuff. Listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that great stuff, of course. I'm your host, Riddell Lewis, and I'm here with my co-host, Paul. How you doing, my guy?
I'm great. A lot of driving today, but happy to be on.
All right. It should be an interesting conversation. Now, we're supposed to have a guest, and I'm not sure what's going on with that situation. So I'm going to give him a little time to see if he shows up. But if he does not show up, then we're going to go into a different conversation. Now, what this conversation will be about basically, this is how I'm seeing it. The responsibility of content creators in this new era and moving forward. I do think that's a legitimate conversation, and it plays into a lot of different things. I've actually been thinking about this conversation for a while, even before the Kai Cenat stuff that happened in New York, but that just reinforces my opinion and like the level of responsibility and influence they have versus the amount of responsibility that they take. There's a discrepancy there, and I think we should definitely talk about that, of course. So before we dive into any of that, let us dive into a review from Hey Ray J 193842. They said, this show isn't pushy when presenting their topics that all may not agree with. It's the only way to have honest discord around these topics. At the end of the day, we're all just hairless monkeys trying to figure out why we're on this space rock. So just be nice to everyone, regardless of what they believe. You know, I respect it. Appreciate you, AJ. And I do want to dive into our what you need to know, kind of catch everybody up in the current events. Now, I only wrote 2 because I forgot to write more. So, Paul, if you have anything you want to shout out as well, we can dive into that. But here's the 2 I have. One of them Actually, both are kind of space related. Funny enough. The first is that there's a new measurement of a subatomic particle known as muons, which could shake up our understanding of the universe. I've always said that a lot of this stuff regarding the universe is based off knowledge we know, and there's so much we don't know. So if something changed in terms of the concept of like the Big Bang Theory, I wouldn't be surprised, right? And another thing that kind of came out is Virgin Galactic conducts its second successful commercial space flight a couple days ago and plans to do space tourism flights once a month. And the great thing about this, in my opinion, is that those flat earthers can finally die. They can finally go away and never exist anymore. So, what do you think about the current events, Paul?
I have a couple to add if you're fine
Go
with it.
for it. Go for it.
All right. So earlier this day, British jets intercepted Russian bombers flying north of Scotland, and then of course, I guess like some of the elephant in the room, the Georgia Attorney General is pursuing charges against that of Donald Trump,
Mm-hmm.
including conspiracy and racketeering charges. However, for some reason, when they were posted to the Fulton County, Georgia court detailing, they were no longer publicly available, but then remade publicly available. Since then, Fulton County, as well as the state of Georgia, have closed down their corresponding capitals and courthouses to ready themselves for the impending protest surrounding them. As
Mm.
for what I think about the flat Earth stuff, look, man, I lived on the Space Coast for a while. These guys are just going to figure out something new, right? Like, it's their bread and butter, right? Like, come on.
Right now, the person I feel like that is kind of perpetuating the movement is definitely Zerka.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, bro, if you're gonna get rich off of the content because all the content you're doing, there's no excuse for you not to go in space, see that this Earth is a sphere or as much of a sphere as it can be, because there's like it's like a oblongish shape, and then stop talking about it for the rest of your life because it's such an annoying conversation to bring up.
Uh,
So
I just think we should
hopefully.
put them all on a rocket and just like launch them out there, and then they could see space and potentially crash into the moon as well. So
Oh, we could send them all to Mars and see how they, see how they like, see if
yeah,
they can
yeah.
restart society over there.
Habitation training.
Exactly, exactly. So, but a lot of interesting stuff you said are revolving, Trump, of course. I mean, there's so many charges that are putting up against him. I'm just waiting till the time where obviously we are in court and see how the trial goes. And obviously, once the election starts, I am so curious how many Trumpsters, if he goes to prison, will still vote for him. It's gonna be something else for this next election. This might be the most wild election, like of at the very least of the 2000s.
Look,
So,
I'll tell you what I told Jonathan. Okay, these people want to make America great again, no matter the cost, right? So you bet your ass that they're going to be going out there and voting for him, even if he's behind bars. So you'll see it for sure.
yeah, that's it's unfortunate, but it's definitely a possibility. So with that said, let's dive into our subtopic. Now, this subtopic, I'm glad Paul is here because he knows quite a bit about the content creation space. So he's a good person to discuss this and get some feedback from. So there's a lot of controversy in terms of fair use. I'm sure you've seen what's going on with people like XQC and Hassan. So this is social subtopics. Are going over something a little bit more socially related, and the controversy falls in line on like what it means to be a good reaction content creator, what you have to do as a reaction content creator, and the aspect of fair use is the lines that are exist today in terms of what is fair use. Will those lines kind of get broken due to activities from people like Hassan and XUC, to the point where content creators are gonna be able to even I'm gonna say they're going to be able to, the people who create the content that people react to, are they going to be able to make things much more difficult for these reaction content creators? So what do you think about all that's going on?
Well, I guess I have like a little nuance on it. So obviously a lot of reaction content is pretty bummish behavior for the most part, right? A content creator is supposed to, in some form or way create more content. You usually see this like when they play games or they do activities or something like
Yeah.
that where they have some sort of persona on top of it. The problem is that a lot of these guys that are doing the reaction content now, at least for the bigger ones, don't really produce much of a reaction at all. I forgot the skinny guy that plays World of Warcraft. I forgot his name, but it if you compare him, who does probably like 20 to 30-minute commentary on a subject when he watches the video, to that of someone like XQC or Hassan Piker, you kind of see it's like night and day, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I'm sure there's been multiple instances in which both of these streamers I just mentioned will kind of like just leave the stream on while they go make dinner or something like that, and they collect donations like throughout it, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I can't imagine what it's like to be like someone that's like, really throwing in your work for these like YouTube videos only to have your views get scalped by someone that's like in the background making barbecue, right? It seems pretty lame. Granted, am I fine with the general principle of React content? Although it's bummish, I will say, yeah, I'm fine with it, right? Granted that there's some form or way of actually like showing something that's like different with it, right? We see this with like historians that react to certain content. We see this with like social analysts, psychologists, body language experts, in
I would
quotes.
say people like Aber and Preach too, because
One hundred
they
percent.
put like snippets in there. They don't even
Yeah,
like sit down, or they put snippets and then go through a whole spiel talking about it. So
exactly. And that content is being formulated throughout it. Did you manage to watch the XQC H3H3 debate on the subject?
oh, I didn't watch it. I've seen clips, and everything I've heard from SQC was just like it was like how are you losing to H3H3? Like the debate
Yeah.
points that he was bringing out was so surface level. It's like he didn't actually have a point to make. He was just defending himself. That's what
So
it seemed like.
I think in some form or way, I guess I have to play defense for Ethan here. I think he actually did a lot of prep for it, and I think he actually swung pretty hard. XQC, I don't know what
No, that's what I'm
happened.
saying.
Oh yeah,
Ethan
okay, gotcha.
annihilated XQC.
Yeah,
XQC is
yeah,
the one
yeah.
who's just
It,
on the
it
defense.
and it sucks because like my guy Destiny was like the guy that coached him for all of this, and then he just fumbled the bag like so fucking hard. Like he should have run the ball, bro, and he didn't. You know what I mean? Like it's an absolute nightmare.
Exactly. The problem that a lot of people have, and this is not technically an XQC problem. It's probably a human problem, if we're being completely honest. Is like pride. Even if you know that the activity you did in terms of leaving the stream and then coming back and just leaving it on and barely saying anything, taking his thumbnail, like you know this is wrong. So it's easy. I'm sure Destiny told him this. Hopefully he told him this. He's go like, okay, take responsibility for this specific action, but defend the principle of
Yeah,
reaction, and then
exactly.
you would definitely win because there's actually, I would say there's so much value in reaction content too, because it gives an extra level of publicity to certain levels of certain content too, that I think is sometimes underappreciated, and it also kind of brings in a more sense of community in terms of like other community, because you see this in the basketball world, because like in the basketball content space, a lot of people react to other people playing 1v1. A lot of people act to their 5v5s and all these other things. They react to it. Everybody's cool with it. All their communities are kind of blended in. The expectation is you see the first video, then you see the reaction to the video. So everybody's eating. Uh, I would actually say, with that said, to bring kind of touch upon a different point, is I don't know if the politics game is necessarily the same. I mean, it is politics, but it's obviously like not everybody wants everybody to eat. That's pretty
Yeah.
obvious. There's a lot of animosity between even people in the same space, right? So that's probably a bad thing for To be fair, XQC is not a political content creator, but he tends to blur the line sometimes when he has certain conversations.
Yeah, so like I think for like with the sports stuff, and you kind of brought up a good point with it, where a lot of these people see boost in their viewership. I think it was the professor who saw like around 100,000 to 200,000 views on a video because I think it was Kai Cenat watched the video in the first place, and it actually like really helped the channel. And I even think he donated proceeds to whatever the professor was doing for charities, right? As for political content reaction, look, dude, like I'll fully like defend it, right? I'm a drama hog when it comes down to it, and I love watching these people just like go crazy over these things. Like I'm sure you've probably seen the Hassan clip of him saying this Weasley little liar, and it's just a classic, right? Like him raging at Destiny is just amazing. And of course, like vice versa, right? Like with Vouch and all these other content creators. But I think for like high fidelity productions, like high fidelity meaning, you actually have like editing of the video on like certain subject matters and the like,
Yeah.
a lot of like graphics being put into it, insightful thought, research, right? Like a Kraut video, or I guess for like the leftist, a Sean video, right? You can actually see like these guys, they get ruthlessly scalped by a lot of these content creators, and it just sucks, right? And I fully side with them DMCAing these creators because the views don't make up for the lack of content actually created. And I think that Destiny put it pretty well. I think honestly, Hassan actually knows this, right? But like usual, he's just too afraid to get out there and open, like actually like show more criticism than he usually does. Granted, he does show criticism to other content creators who do it, but it's definitely a case of picking and choosing your battles with publicity in mind. Pretty sure that he probably like goes through it in his head and says, "Hey, is this worth the risk to me to like say what I actually think on the subject?" And just
Yeah.
disappointing, right? Like obviously, I'm a little guy in all of this. I'm basically like a nobody. But Hassan, if you do manage to hear me sometime soon, just wise up, bro. I've seen your debates against Charlie Kirk. I've seen the power that your mind actively has. So, like show some balls, get out there and call it out because you know it. I know you partake in it too. You know it's wrong. So just get better, right? And that goes out to all the other content creators as well.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing when we're looking at the political content landscape, because what feeds it, instead of like the community aspect that a lot of other like niches have, what feeds is obviously the short clips, the snippets, the drama, as you said. I remember a recent clip. Hassan was attacking a vendor after he was getting attacked from that Kai, revolt, not revolt, like what's right, it's honestly might be the
Let's
best way
call it a
because they,
riot, dude.
yeah, they
Yeah,
were just
because
going crazy over there in New
yeah.
York. Is like, and it's tough. It's I can't say it's tough because I think it's easy, but I have to be realistic. It is tough for a lot of people when they have a political allegiance to maybe kind of know what they mean. And this is actually goes hand in hand with the Anna Kasparian stuff, right? So she obviously she knows her allegiance to the left, and then now she's kind of rethinking a lot of things, and now she's thinking a little bit more critically and logically. And what happened in turn? People on the left started attacking her. So it is tough for people. I could definitely see that in terms of the reaction space in terms of politics. But overall, I think the principle is pretty is fine. I think especially when you add a lot of content in the sense of your commentary, because another aspect that people don't think about is people love to watch the video through. They hear your commentary, but maybe they want to see the whole video without any skips and without any pause. So then they watch the whole video by themselves. So there's a lot of things to it. It's not a simple don't react versus react type of situation.
I,
Um,
I
Go
was
ahead.
going to say something real quick. I think a lot of liberals and social democrats, for that matter, kind of like are stuck in this thing where a lot of online leftists criticize them, and these liberals and social democrats feel as if that criticism is career ending, right?
Yeah.
Like it's gonna like ruin me if I speak out against X, Y, or Z, and step out of like the ideological purity on it, right? But as we've seen, right, it's just apparent that this isn't the case whatsoever. However, this kind of like phantom of these online leftists actively haunts a lot of these creators and genuinely makes them afraid that they'll try to dig up dirt on them. They'll try to get out there and like mess with their events and stuff like that. And while this does happen, right? Like for example, what happened with Destiny after the Kenosha riots in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, where they went out of their way to ruin his campaigning in Omaha, Nebraska for a Democratic politician. The majority of the time, I'll safely say, is that these people don't have much power whatsoever, right? A
Yeah.
lot of them are people that, I don't like saying this a lot, but they are people that just live at home and are usually unemployed, right? They don't have the political power to actually really take you down. They can start petitions against you, they can start all these different things against you. But as long as your rhetoric is sound and right, you away with these things and say it, right? And I assume we're going to talk about the Kai Cenat stuff in detail. So let's just break into it here, right? The way Hassan has been talking about this is cowardly, right?
Yep.
Hassan knows what the problem is here, right? Hassan knows that this was supposed to be a regular event, right? Where they were doing some like philanthropic activities of like giving out these game systems and stuff like that, and then it spiraled into a riot, right? He likes to say that the media is trying to portray it as a bank run, right? Granted, I do agree that sometimes the media, when it comes to like Black Americans assembling and stuff like that, they can be pretty negative towards them, label them as like thugs, robbers, etc. Right? But I think the footage in this one kind of spoke for itself, right? The activity in it was just absolutely uncondonable, and I'm sure he probably thinks the same way. But to try to dilute the information pool on what happened, right? For example, when he said, look, they're just stealing a bag of chips from a vendor, later on, I think like messing with the vendor stand and assaulting an elderly person, not to mention the property damage, but I don't think they really care about that. Uh, I, I think it just is something that is readily apparent and is easy to say that we should prosecute people that allow for these things to happen. Kai Cenat did not get a permit to actually do the event in the first place. His staff, and I'll agree with Abba and preach on this, right? His staff are definitely be held even more liable than Kai Cenat himself because his event organizer did not go through the proper avenues that were actually supposed to be had so they could get the event going. And because of that, I just think that it's absolutely cowardly of Hassan to not step up and say it out loud that this is something that is absolutely unacceptable, right? And furthermore, for him to obfuscate the information is just kind of cruel, right? It, I get that he doesn't care about property damage on this scale, or rather, he doesn't care about it so much so that he's willing to speak up about it. But at the attack on the older guy, the attack on some of the vendors, these working class people, this proletariat that he often talks about protecting is being attacked. And even if it's other members of that proletariat, that working class that's doing it, you still have to call it out, right? You have to moderate it and you have to actively police it. So it's not that hard, right? That sometimes
Yeah.
the media can be mean to black people on these type of things, but come on, man.
Yeah, obviously this is one thing I hate in terms of like these circumstances is that they already have an overarching opinion based on who's presenting the information when the logical thing is obviously take things to fact by fact basis, look at the context of the situation. The context of the situation from what I'm aware of is Kai just thought, okay, let me put this on Instagram and we should be good. And that's one of the most irresponsible things he could do, being that famous, being that popular. And this goes hand in hand with the main topic that we're going to talk about, and that's individual responsibility as content creators moving forward. Now, obviously, I'm speaking from the reason why I'm speaking on this is because I realize, especially moving forward, how much responsibility, impact, and influence a lot of these content creators have. And I'm comparing it to like old influential people, not old as in like old people, but like older types of influential people that you think of, right? and those would be similar. They would still exist today in terms of mainstream media, but they would be much more impactful probably back in the day. You know, people that are actors, for example, people that are musicians, of course, um, and even like politicians or whatever. Very, very famous people is the point of this, and obviously athletes. I forgot to say athletes as well. Now, the branch of fame and influence has extended from those people to individual content creators. And what I feel from back in the day is that there was a realization that your influence and your impact is extraordinary, which means that everything you do has to be carefully thought out. There's the whole they all have a PR team. Some people don't like that because the appeal to content creators nowadays is the authenticity aspect, but that authenticity can be damaging if you don't take into account the influence you currently have. One thing that I do hear from content creators sometimes, and I at this point, maybe a couple years ago, I've been like, you know what, fair enough, because I know some athletes say this too. But after like maturing and really thinking about this, it's not a good statement to make. It's actually a very lazy statement to make when you said I had no plan to be a role model. It comes with the gig. If you are becoming famous, if you are becoming rich, if you're becoming a notable individual due to that same the same impact, the same amount of people that are giving you their attention and their money, those are the same people that you're influencing. So it's hand in hand when it comes down to growing as an individual based off clout at the end of the day. So you're automatically a role model, and there's a reason why so many people nowadays are getting, especially the young, are getting so strongly influenced by people like Kai, by people like Speed. These people are barely over 20 years old, but because of their clout versus their, not even, yes, their character and some because they're entertaining, but because of how much impact they have, and I guess the entertaining part, them as like role models, when you think of role models, it's like grown individuals who's supposed to, you know, teach the people of the next generation. They don't have that aspect from what I'm seeing, no offense, but they, you don't need that to be a role model because it comes with the territory. So that's a conversation we definitely need to have here. Paul, what do you think?
So, like, I kind of view content creators that kind of get big as the same way I view politicians, which is not obviously in the same way that like they influence our laws, right? Like, content creators don't do that. They have like some influence over our society, but the comparison I'm making here is just the view of empathy that I have for them, right? When they say I didn't want this, I don't care, right? Like, once again, I get I'm the little guy, and the content creator can give a less of a fuck about me if they want, right? But the reality is that you do have an impact, and furthermore, I mean, yeah, your fans are your content, right? Like, they are the people that are actively following you. They do the things that you do. I think it was Gideon actually made a video about how someone stole his do rag one time,
Oh yeah, I
like
saw that.
out in,
Yep.
yeah, out in open public. But I'll tell Gideon, man, like, that is kind of a consequence of some of the content you've created, right? You actively fuck with people in public all the time. You go out there and you kind of give them a little bit of a hard time here and there. And as a result of that, dude, I mean, look, I'm not going to say you get what's coming for you because I don't really believe in that type of logic. But I will say it is somewhat of a natural consequence for something that will happen because of the content that you produce, right? And I don't think I can have much empathy for you in that fashion. Uh, the reality is that you have become a celebrity, and like all celebrities, right? I feel as if that you've transcended us normal working class people, right? And you just don't really deserve a lot of my empathy because of it, right?
Yeah, and the fact that you can become so famous and so impactful, not easily, but like the route to you doing it is like you can create your own content and hope it bangs, versus obviously something like being an actor or being a athlete. There are so many more hoops you have to run through. There's so much more like roadblocks that's stopping you from getting to where you gotta go. It's so at the end of the day, it's a lot more like gamey. If we're being completely honest, the levels is different. I'm not saying becoming a content creator is easy because it's not. Well, the road to becoming a content creator, in terms of the impediment that is trying to stop you from getting where you got to go, is not nearly as strenuous in comparison to all the other individuals and influencers of old that got so popular and so famous from whatever route they got famous from. And the reason why this is important to know is because all these impactful content creators, what they've done is they influence so many of the youth to also be content creators. And to go into what you said in terms of Gideon, what people are starting to think, especially nowadays, where everybody, I swear, like every video I see, everybody has their phone out to record every single thing. And I'm not trying to be like a boomer or anything, but like, do you really have to record everything? It's just everybody wants that clout because everyone realizes if I go viral, if someone reacts to my stuff, if someone talks about this video that I made, I can get famous. So they realize that some activities, or actually a lot of activities that they see, they want to emanate. And when we look at people like Kai, right? Kai extremely entertaining. I would even say he's a bad dude, but we look at what you do in terms of the content that you produce, being extremely wild, inviting a lot of women, having firework wars in your house. Of course, you're going to influence someone's like, oh, this is what I have to do. Gideon with all his pranks, although I love his pranks, they're extremely creative. But doing those things, people are gonna think, okay, this is what I have to do. A perfect example. I don't know if Paul, if you know who I'm talking about, but that guy named Millie, I think that's his name, from the UK. He was influenced obviously by content creator pranksters. And what did we see him? He wanted to go to another level, so he stands out. So he does stuff by going into people's homes. He does stuff by stealing people's dogs. He's quoting it as pranks, but this inherently, these are not okay activities. Those are not good activities to do. But he got popular enough in terms of the notoriety. It's negative publicity, but publicity is publicity. But he got popular enough to appear on like an Aiden Ross show, a Gideon show, that Piers Morgan show. He actually was on that too. They're all flaming him, but he got what he wanted, the attention. So the next person's gonna think, okay, if I want the attention, I have to be even wilder. The thing that I'm kind of like not protesting, but like telling or asking content creators to do is you can be your authentic self. You could be your creative self. There's a kind of beauty. This is kind of why I do content creation too, because I want to speak the politics game based off my personal way and perspective. But you have to establish a certain sense of uh, a barrier from the audience versus what you're doing, saying what I'm doing is not okay. What I'm doing is my own choice. What I'm doing shouldn't be, copied for other people to do. And I don't think any content creator that I've seen, especially the big ones, do any of that. I don't think any of them try to make a distinction between this is just content. They say, oh, yeah, this is content, but they don't make a strong enough distinction for their audience to realize that these are actions that the general people should not be doing. And I think that's a very powerful thing to do as a content creator in terms of taking self responsibility. So what do you think about self responsibility? How do you think content creators can take more responsibility as
Well,
an individual?
I really don't think that they can in a lot of cases, right? Like you said, they're kind of beholden to their viewers, and their income stream does come from activities that they actually partake in, right? As a result of that, I actually don't think it's on them to actually deter these things. I think it's up to the state. And I could say the viewership, but I don't really think the viewership's going to hold them that accountable. Only if
Of course,
something
yeah,
like
for sure.
exactly, only if something like absolutely outrageous, like a canceling for sexual assault or like battery, maybe can do it. But even then, we've seen people get off of that before. It does come up to prosecution under the law or civil suits against these individuals that do it. I was going to ask you the question, what do you think the best deterrent is for this yourself?
So it really, it's so tough for me to say this, but I think there needs to be a realization that a lot of these individuals, especially the young ones, to expect them to have the um I guess r- like to expect them to be mature enough, that's the best word I'm going to use because the other word I can't say it, to expect them to be mature enough to understand how their actions can be detrimental to the youth that is potentially viewing their content is unrealistic. I try to always think in terms of what is realistic, and that may be unrealistic, especially like you said, they want to make sure they're authentic, they want to make sure they're not affecting their income stream. So the only best case scenario is we have to make it where these individuals have to have a certain level of representation. And obviously that exists in like all other fields, right? When you go into sports, you automatically have an agent. When you go into Hollywood, probably the same thing. When you're a politician, the amount of people checking you and making sure you're not being stupid is, numerous. Obviously we gotta make sure that we're finding the right balance so we don't make content creation a corporation necessarily, which is kind of some of people's issues with certain things in Hollywood, because this is the entertainment business, and the best ex- uh I guess copy of what content creators do is Hollywood, but we know all the issues Hollywood has on a lot of different circumstances. But we do have to figure out to, especially, I know certain content creators in YouTube and Twitch, they have like, some type of helper. I forgot what they're called. They got a guy basically that they can contact straight from whatever platform they're using to ask them questions. I do think there needs to be a serious conversation that when a content creator gets big enough that they automatically have to have representation to make sure that they are going in the right direction.
I really don't think, just like in the sake of business law, right? I don't think that this is something that, and even in like politically speaking, can actually be passed, though, right? Because the implications it can have for other businesses is pretty insane. Keep in mind, right? A lot of content creators usually are operating on, pretty low income at their start, unless you incorporate Patreon and other subscription based services into it, right? Um, but look, like I agree on a personal level, right? If I'm the content creator, if I'm talking to a content creator, I'm going to tell them and I'm going to get an advisor to tell me not to do things, right? A great example of someone just absolutely, I think, ignoring the advice of their peers was when JonTron talked about race, right? I don't know if you're familiar with this, but JonTron, the way Destiny got really popular was through this debate he had with JonTron after JonTron was espousing a lot of views about how like whites have like higher IQ levels and how they are less prone to committing crime, and how like in a way or sense they're kind of just like better, right? And he said all this stuff absolutely unmoderated. Now granted, in the pursuit of truth, I think, I'll say look, let him speak, right? Yeah, let him cook, as they say. But on a business standpoint, I'll tell the guy to say, hey, look, I don't think you should do that. You should 100% get someone to somewhat manage you. But a lot of these content creators usually either can't afford it, and like when they're starting off, JonTron definitely could have. Um, or the other aspect is that a lot of these guys want to run a really tight ship, and furthermore, like you said, they want to have that like raw type of personality that's with them, right? They want to appeal to their viewers. They want to have that personality, kind of like I don't say cult of personality, but you know what I'm getting at, kind of
Yeah.
arise with their viewership so that they can have like an almost unconditional faith within them, right? And I think JonTron walked away relatively unscathed after the debate, even though he, I think, took a creative hiatus afterwards. But with that being said, in terms of getting this like implemented on a policy level, I just don't think it's possible, Riddell. Like, I think that the implications it would have on broader business, like, imagine, for example, let's say you're running a like a notary firm, right? Like you notarize documents or something like that.
Yep.
And then outside of it, you live in this like really dense liberal area, and you put up like a Trump flag or something like that. You and I would both tell that person this is a really bad fucking idea, right? Like, you really shouldn't do this, bro. It can have implications on your business. It can cause protesters, people to boycott it, etc. Right? Or let's say like you just like say something racist online, right? Of course, once again, we tell them not to, but to kind of beholden business owners, creators, independent contractors, etc., to a standard of needing consultation, I think creates not even just like a nanny state, but something that makes a lot of starting businesses relatively untenable unless the market can figure out a way to, make it kind of like cheaper so it's like more affordable. But I don't trust the market for anything in most cases. I think that it won't work that well.
So basically, how I'm thinking it, because in a policy wise, I definitely agree with you. It'd be hard to implement this policy wise and make it make sense, but I don't think necessarily a lot of the kind of niches of influential individuals have a policy where like agents are required. Like in the NFL, you technically can represent yourself, and I think Lamar Jackson either did it himself. I think it was a combination of he does it himself and he has his mother help him, but he doesn't have a agent necessarily. But I do think there's something to be said that the overarching company that everybody works for in terms of YouTube, Twitch, Kick, whatever it is, if they incentivize representation as a more strong thing for content creators who hit a certain level. So not all content creators need representation, especially because we know that your impact won't reach. The only reason why the moment you like declare for the draft, you probably should get representation because like once you declare for the draft, you're gonna have agents hitting you up because the expectation now is like even though you may not be one of the stars, even as a bench player, you have a lot of influence over a lot of people. So there's definitely a threshold of okay, this is probably when your representation should start. What that number would be for each content sphere, we could definitely kind of discuss how much we the proportion of their influence versus the amount of followers, subscribers they have. That's a number I feel like we probably can find a general estimate for. But with that said, if these companies were to incentivize a certain level of representation, and I do think agents and lawyers would start popping up much more moving forward that are content creator specific agents, and I'm sure someone would start an agency for that as well. But I'm sure at the very least these companies can look for a third party that kind of knows what they're talking about in terms of the entertainment business. Because like I said, this is this what content creators do and what people in Hollywood do. They're similar enough where you can find some overlap. So with that said, it would have to be more of a cultural uh influenced by the corporate the overarching company that incentivizes these content creators that you need to get representation. Therefore, once it becomes established that people got representation and people know about it, because I also think that a lot of people actually do have representation. Like Kai technically does have a representation because Gideon did say it, but they never really let people know. And letting people know that I have representation, I have people looking out for me, is another big part to kind of tell other content creators coming up that, hey, I probably should have representation. Hey, so there's just a lot of things I feel like, or in this specific situation, that's how I would go about it, or that's how I would argue for it. And moving forward, I feel like this is going to be more and more important because I can only see the trajectory of the content creators. I can't really see them like dwindling in popularity and infamy because everybody has a phone, everybody wants to be a content creator. And I only can see, honestly, as of right now, I only can see things getting worse if people are not kind of PRing these content creators. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but like once again, right? Like I don't know. I just on like a regulatory basis, I really don't think it's like that tenable, especially considering the precedent that could be set, right? Like I understand even if you have like a mandatory minimum viewership, right, to then enact it, I just don't think it's going to really play ball.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I would have to agree to disagree because I do think it would be it would work in a way that once we find that number, because you could say there's a lot more that goes into it obviously than subscribers and followers, because you have people like Destiny who is like what, close to a mil, maybe a mil in terms of subscribers on YouTube, and then uh he probably gets more interaction from his fan base than someone probably who has maybe 5 million subscribers. So there's probably a lot of statistics you would have to look into in terms of engagement versus followers versus overall outreach in terms of, hey, this content creator did this. How did it affect people as a whole? There's probably a lot of analytics you can go into in terms of that, and you could find a good number for it. Overall, the point of this is to make sure that these content creators, who as of right now in terms of some of the most influential people, like they're reaching heights in terms of influence where they are legitimately challenging some of the most influential people on like other niches, like athletes, actors, musicians, like legitimately, like you can make an argument that Kai is more famous than a good chunk of like musicians. He's probably more famous than all musicians his age. Probably there probably is an argument based on actors around his age, but he's probably just gonna get more famous. With that said, and what and as it keeps on going on, if his management doesn't get better, because that's the hope, his management gets better from this circumstance, from this mistake, then whatever he does next could be even more damaging to the next city, for example.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I don't have much commentary to offer aside from what I've already offered on it. Unfortunately, I don't know. Like, look, I'm sure you and I see eye to eye on everything except probably this area. Um, Here's a question for you, actually. Do you think that there should be a separate policing body within the federal government? It could be like relatively small for that of celebrities.
No, not necessarily. No, I wouldn't go that far in terms of a new policing body for celebrities. Um, it's really hard to kind of figure out what exactly they're going to be policing, and especially once you kind of make a distinction between this policing department and the people they're interacting. I would be worried that they would be kind of too involved, since they are directly related to whatever celebrity that they are kind of policing, and they'll be kind of too involved. There's really no way to make sure that there's no potential tampering and bias from that department versus the celebrity that they're policing. um
Well,
Go
let
ahead.
me push back against that really quick. So, like, couldn't you say that we could extend this argument, for example, to granted, it's not going to be that sensible, in my opinion, but we had like federal investigation bureaus for like the Casa Nostra, like, the Italian crime families and stuff like that. And
Right.
that involvement led to their arrest, right? I think having like a base level of some form of surveillance against or just general like looking into when the case actually presents itself for content creators, I think is a pretty responsible thing, right? Granted, there's like implications with some of the aspects of the First Amendment, but I think let's extend this to like these like political radicals that stream, right? Like Nick Fuentes, Eric Stryker, etc.
Right.
Right? I think that you can have this do some real good, and I think if anything, I don't really think we're going to see a lot of tamp scale, considering the federal government, at least within the Department of Justice's accountability, right?
Yeah, so I definitely see what you're saying in terms of the family that you're referring to, but obviously the distinction for me is that it's very apparent that the actions being committed by said family or whatever crime organization you're referring to are actions that are negatively impacting society as a whole. When it comes to celebrities and content creators, that's it'd be hard pressed to sell that type of aspect. If you have it baseline to where like any action that happens, they react to said action versus them doing research and them following all the activities, I'd probably be more in favor to that because once these individuals kind of the appeal for content creators is like being attracted to their personality and them as people. So when it comes to the expectation for me that people won't be attracted, not like sexually obviously, but won't be attracted to their personality if they do like a lot of research or look them up constantly, it'll be hard pressed because once they have to act upon a negative action, how much faith I would have them to do what is necessary will be difficult for me to be confident in because that's kind of where I'm coming from that point of view.
Okay, yeah, I can see some of that. Sure.
Um, but I guess to kind of go into another aspect of the content creator space, because like I said, I've been thinking about this a lot in depth in terms of the content creators and their growth of influence, and a lot of individuals who are also trying to go down the route as content creation. Do you, Paul? I'm curious to what your thoughts about this, in terms of content creation and the ease of becoming a content creator, comparison to a lot of these other influential fields. How far do you think content creators, as a I guess career path would go in terms of the
Like
number
career
one
sustainability.
dream job, right? Because like the number
Yeah.
one dream job a lot of the kids would say back in the day would be like an athlete, an actor, maybe a doctor, whatever. But moving forward, I mean, it's hard pressed for me to say that I think a lot of kids at this point are going to want to become content creators, right?
Yeah, like I think that there's a lot of impact on the youth to do so. I worked with a lot of kids of like poor backgrounds, at risk, and those that had less opportunity. And it is seen as like a way to kind of like get into this type of thing. I think it can serve as a distractor, career progressing. But that being said, I mean, kind of like you said with athletes and stuff like that, these things have always existed. Now, for the how do I put it? The like the long-term future for someone that does become a content creator, I think that's where the question actually gets kind of interesting, right? Because the attrition rate for these content creators is pretty difficult, right? Securing an active fan base that won't just migrate over to another one and stay significantly more consistent with that creator is something that's very real for a lot of these people. Now, we've seen, for example, a lot of like the what are they called? Who are the girls that are the most viewed people on TikTok? The Demalios, I think they're called.
Oh yeah, like D'Amelio.
Yeah, they've had the ability to, I think, sufficiently and admirably, for that matter, kind of weave their way into high fidelity contracts. They have like good wealth managers. They have, other avenues such as like merch lines and whatnot, right? But I'm sure you kind of seen this with like Twitch streamers that, for example, they get like a host from someone and they think that they're going to make it, and then there's just a massive fall off after it. it.
Yeah,
It doesn't really produce much. So the thing I'll tell everyone, right, is, look, I think it's great that your kid wants to try it, and you should encourage them to some element or some level, but you need to continue pushing them into their other goals that they already had and make sure they do not abandon them, right? This can be said for anything else like athletics, professional gaming, and other things that are a little bit unrealistic, or rather get into fields that have such massive attrition rates because of things outside of their own control, right? It's not like academics where you could go, into a doctoral program or something like that. And I understand why people do this is because it is, a way that you don't have to like put yourself in the debt from a trade school or from higher level education, right? But the thing I'll just still say is that, like being an athlete, there's a lot of other people trying to be athletes in this. And that pool is so large that only there are some that can come out on top. and furthermore, actually stay consistently on top. It's like an athlete that's continually at risk of getting a career-ending injury at all points in time, right? You never know when it's going to happen. It can be something that's almost even uncontrollable. There can be another force of nature that gets in the way, car accident, bad day on the court, etc. Right? And it's just something that's not really worth pursuing, I think, for a lot of young people. Stay in school, get out there, and really pursue those original dreams you had as a kid, rather than the stuff that I think a lot of this like capitalism has kind of produced, right? Yeah.
So for me, when it comes down to it, because after we had the discussion about content creator individual responsibility and how their actions can be negative for the public as a whole, another aspect of it is the influence of becoming a content creator, which is what we're talking about right now. And the reason why I see it a little bit differently from like the other professions that you were speaking of is like there are active barriers to kind of figure out that I'm not made for this, right? When it comes to athletes, for example, you when it comes down to it, if you're not good when you're like a kid, that's one hint. If you're not good in middle school, that's another hint. If you're not, and once you hit high school and if you're not one of those guys, that's another hint. And then it goes to AU, it goes to college, and then obviously the pros. Now, there are so many barriers, there's so many checkpoints, better yet, that kind of tells you that this is not for me. And those checkpoints can really help you understand that I probably should go this different path. And the stuff with the injuries thing is also very interesting. But I would say the moment you make a pro, then you already got a very, very large contract. You already are kind of set up to kind of, even if you get an injury, you have a certain level of influence and impact, or you can invest that money into a different job. Like you're kind of set, you'll be good. You made it to the pros. If you get injured, you could probably do something else and still live the rest of your life the way you want it. When it comes to the content creator space, which what I think is a lot different, is that I don't think those checkpoints exist. And like you said, there's always these false expectations that I'm going to get clout from maybe a host, maybe a couple likes, maybe this one video popped off for like a couple thousand views, and now my expectations, I'm just going to keep on going up from that. Well, we know the content creation space is extremely volatile. That's why people say the best thing you can do, obviously, is making engaging content and being consistent. But even when you do but one or both of those things, and learning the skills to do those things is very time consuming for especially making a very engaging content. It took a genius like Mr. Beast to kind of get to where he's at, and he was doing a lot of trial and error. What it especially when you look at a lot of the big content creators, I think you probably noticed this too. A lot of those big content creators, the only way they had the amount of time to succeed is because they did nothing else but that. They put all their time and effort in that, in a much less like competitive space when it was way less known. And by doing that and being consistent with it, then they became who they are today. The volatility, now that everybody's trying to do it, and now with the aspect that, okay, if I'm going to make engaging content, I'm gonna have to look at the people who already do the content and copy them and potentially do something way too outrageous, as we've seen time and time again, to the point where it's actually ridiculous how much what people would do for clout. I don't know how much you scroll on TikTok, but it's actually so annoying to
Yeah.
see what these people would do for a little bit of attention, a little bit of a clout, a little bit of a prank. They think, oh, it's a camera, so it's all ha ha. It's like, bro, this no, no, no. That's not how it works. So that's why I'm thinking like if content creation becomes like the number one dream job, and it doesn't have these checkpoints that I see that all their positions have. It's way more volatile and in the upward and more competitive. It's way harder to convince. It's way harder for us to kind of what's the best way I could put this? It's way harder for me to see this as a more as a lucrative career path, especially in comparison to the other influential ones like an actor or an athlete, where you have these checkpoints and where you can kind of figure out that I'm meant for this.
Yeah, I mean, look, something I'll say is like, in regards to these people that do these insane things for clout, this one definitely comes down, I think, platforms, right? To wholesalely just get rid of a lot of this content. Now, this is going to probably take forms of legislation in this regard, right? Because these platforms aren't going to do it because, it creates a lot of fucking money for them, right? Um, that being said, I really do think that in the instances of these guys breaking the law, the boot of the state does have to come down, right? If you're harassing people at your local Walmart and just fucking with them while they live these monotonous lives of hell and torment, trying to get by as working class Americans, you fucking suck. And you deserve, I think, in this case, some real deal, at least like societal neglect in a lot of this, right? And people who will listen will either say one or two things. They'll say, I'm right, or they'll say, like, why are you so heavy handed? I'm heavy handed because, I know people that are dirt poor and they live already depressing lives enough. They're from broken homes. They have hard enough lives. And you messing with them and making money off of their reaction is just, I think it's just despicable, right? It's fucking gross, right? This goes out to any leftist that's listening to me, right? If you truly do love the working class and you want to protect them, then protect them and protect their fucking dignity. You don't need to just like shell out or sell out all the time to these content creators, or be afraid of criticizing them because they might be a person of color or something like that. Just show some fucking balls and try to protect the people that live on this hell and torment in this country, and start pushing policy that will benefit them. Don't play defense for these people that are just hurting them. That's all I got to say on that.
I'm with you. I get really tired of seeing that. And I want to touch upon another part of this as well, part of this conversation, because there's so many important aspects, and I feel like there's two more that I feel like we should discuss. And one is like the impact, and I guess we kind of talked about it, but let's kind of resurface the conversation a little bit. Is that the impact of opinions on the content creation space, right? And I see a lot of people make so many opinions when I scroll through TikTok. Obviously, we have some infamous people like Andrew Tate who are saying things that, and once you really think about it, none of it makes any sense. He's just saying things and he's just rich and has a lot of women around him, so people believe him. But you can just go scroll through TikTok and you see people. And I saw a funny TikTok because this guy was like, bro, people just be making TikToks and they just be lying to you, and all of you just believe it because you believe it because it sounds good. So another aspect is, one, we already talked about the actions and how it can lead to negative consequences, especially if the guy has no type of responsibility that he's taking in terms of being a role model, but also the things that they say and the aspect of how that can influence people, and that also goes into like people not PRing them. Um, I would say I feel like you could also argue, especially nowadays where people are just having opinions about everything without being like fact checked. I would argue, and let me know your thoughts about this, that it could honestly be more damaging in terms of what people are saying and people just believing what they're saying without like ever like fact checking or doing their own research, in terms of uh content creators and them not being responsible enough to realize that what I'm saying could actually make a lot of people believe it. And I think you brought in a perfect example, like Nick Fuentes, for example. Right. So, what do you think about that aspect?
Yeah, I'm not sure I kind of like understand the question. Can you rephrase it?
So, do you think someone's words versus like all the pranks and all the activities in terms of being irresponsible, but do you think someone's opinions and their words can be more damaging than those individuals?
100%. Absolutely. Forming like political movements is significantly worse than that of individual action, right? Like I'll say it, right? Like the people that are motivated to do like these, cavalier pranks and just to fuck with working class people are kind of like, drops in the barrel. The real deal threat though comes from the societal implications. People like Tate and Fuentes can make on our countrymen, right? Like, let's just be real here, right? Andrew Tate is a fucking criminal thug, right? There's no other way to get around it. He is a pimp and he's a piece of shit. And he influences so many young men in this country, right? If people want to try to like pull the race card on me for calling him a thug, right? They can eat me for all I care, right? The reality is this is someone that profiteers off of women. He actively manipulates them into getting into the industry. You could cry consent all you want. We'll see how the charges go against him, right? But when it comes down to it, yeah, these guys have like massive impact. I remember one day I was working with the kids and I saw one and he was watching a video of it. He was like, he's on to something. Now, granted, I don't think he really understood everything in it. And I think he was maybe just joking with me, right? But what happens to the kids that don't think that, right? I know a lot of young guys that watched like, yeah, I'm not going to say the title of the video, right? So I don't like, propagate it out there, but they watched like Holocaust denial videos in like kind of like the 2014 through 16 years, right? And they became like avid Nazis for a while. They embraced these like fascistic ideals. They cut themselves off from family. They radicalized in a lot of ways. Some of them went to prison. All right, not the people I know, but people that fell into this. Right, this is just so much worse than the other. Right, I'm not going to be one of these you know, conservatives that try to obfuscate and say, oh no, like people like Kai Cenat are worse than Nick Fuentes. Like, absolutely not. Right. Anyone that says that's a coward. The reality is that if you can build like a political base and furthermore start activity that actually distances people from their own families, destroys their communities and divides them, that is so much more damaging than that of something like, stealing someone's groceries at a, like at a grocery store.
And I 100% agree. And there's also something to be said that it's so much easier to capture people based off some ludicrous opinion versus some like prank, right? We That's how exactly how Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes got so popular. That's exactly how the red pill community and just pearly things get popular. Saying ludicrous things, and it's so ludicrous, but it kind of captures you based on how ridiculous it is, especially those people who kind of want to buy into it because of their current lifestyle is depressing and there's really no direction as of right now. And it's not just like the far right crazies either. It's not the far lefties too, have people who kind of influence a lot of people through their, you know, whatever they're talking about, and influence them to believing that their rhetoric is the right one. It's absolutely insane that you don't even need to be like an extremely popular content creator to influence the masses based off some opinion. For example, right? I saw something on social media, and I was like, bro, ain't no way someone believes this. And this guy, I don't remember if it was a Twitter post or a TikTok video, but someone tried to make a claim that the fires in Maui were fake because
Oh
the
yeah.
trees weren't burnt down all the way and the power poles weren't burnt down all the way. And I went through the comment section. I was like hoping like people probably just flaming this guy. And then a bunch of people like, "Oh no, you're right. You're right. You're right." And it just shows you that this guy doesn't even have to be the most popular guy. He could just say something ludicrous and appeal to these masses of people that have nothing going on for themselves. It's crazy.
No, it's kind of nutty how like the monotony that people actually like have in their lives can allow them to just jump down these like really deep rabbit holes. Similarly to this, are you familiar with like where this theory came from?
Which theory?
The theory that the Maui fires were like man-made or they weren't
Oh
like,
no, I have
yeah.
no idea where it came from.
So they came from this conspiracy theory that was propagated by some creators online, but furthermore by Marjorie Taylor Greene, the congresswoman from Georgia, where they alleged that the government and arsonists using these high frequency space lasers that would fire down
Oh my
on these
god, bro.
areas. Yeah. And look, like I'm gonna agree with you, bro. Right? I'm sure you've probably seen it yourself. But the best way to lose your fucking mind is by going onto a YouTube video that has some political nature, some or like something that's like a little bit centrist, and just looking at the comment section. You can see crazy stuff in there. You could see like paranoid schizophrenics posting John 3:16 over and over again, right? And then you see the like their video history, and they have like videos of them like talking about how like the police are gang stalking them and stuff like that, right? And it's there. And the worst part is that, like you said, on those comments, and you just hope and pray in your mind that they're going to be disavowed. Everyone's like, dude, you are onto something here. And it's just like, I don't know. It makes you want to put a gun in your mouth. You know what I mean?
No, I 100%. Bro, it's so annoying seeing all this stuff. And it's much harder to kind of figure out how to fix this problem, because at the very least with the influence of content creators, I feel like you can find a certain point when their influence really impacts people. When it comes to like saying crazy stuff on the internet, like anybody could say crazy stuff on the internet, and for some reason it gets popular because of all these people that we're talking about. And to check that is almost impossible, right? Unless we kind of limit their freedom of speech to certain things in some way. And it gets you kind of black pilled to go like, bro, we gotta just get these stupid ideologies and stupid opinions off the platform sometimes. That definitely gets you black pilled to think that, because it's actually crazy how much people want to believe these crazy things versus like not even versus like thinking that it's just a crazy conspiracy from some depressing dude or some depressing girl. I've seen so it's actually insane how many American, and they all kind of look the same too. All these American conspiracy theories about all these different things. So they're much harder to check. The only thing I could say about that, because it's mostly like grown adults, it's not even a kid thing at this point, is that if you see it, you gonna have to check it, bro. That's the best thing I could say about that, because I don't really think there's anything to kind of stop this, really. And me and Paul agree that it's more damaging. You just kind of have to continuously check it. You have to you tell people that this is get people to agree with you in a way, say like, bro, this is kind of ridiculous, just think about it more. And this is kind of where the discussion aspect goes into it a little deeper, that you got to have discussions with people, you got to talk to people, say, bro, this is ridiculous. And this is kind of like why this platform exists, and why I've started going on panels too, because not gonna lie, I went on a panel recently, Paul, on Wix channel, and the panel discussion was about slurs versus anti slurs, right? And I was in the camp of there's no reason people should be using slurs. They have no value. You're just being edgy. So that's where I come from in terms of slurs. Um, and the person that was on my side, because the other people were all like, "Oh yeah, we should use slurs." The only person that was on my side in terms of anti-slur had a very they started digging deep in her, because she said some wild things back in the day, and she said things that are arguably worse than saying a slur. And again, it just goes into that you got to have these discussions, because if I allowed the person that was with me to kind of make the case, nobody would even challenge it, because everybody would have been like, yeah, we should have slurs, because whatever this other person was saying was not it, right? So people, if you know that what you're hearing is crazy, you just got to get involved with the discussion and try to like convince people in a way, or at the very least allow people to hear your perspective, so it's not a echo chamber of just conspiracy theorists in the comment section, right? So what do you think, Paul? Do you think there's another better way in terms of dealing with these people?
Like all the slur stuff, the thing I always just try to do is like, explain like why we don't say them and stuff like that, right? But for the echo chamber stuff, there really unfortunately is no real way to break it up. Like a lot of people
Yeah.
say, like education, but that starts at like the grassroots before people have like ideological commitments, right? Past that, I think that the crazies and the disillusioned are going to stay crazy and disillusioned, right? There's no real way to wake them up. And a lot of the people in these comment sections, unfortunately, bear some form of like mental illness, I think, in a lot of cases, which sucks. There's really not much you can do, man. I'm sorry for the short answer, but like,
No, no. I mean, I was just trying to hear if you had something other to add because like I said, there's really not much you can do about these situations, right? So, with that said, at the very least, listen to what I said. If you see something dumb, call it out briefly. Just call it out. Shame is a good thing. It's a good thing. Don't make them believe that shame is a bad thing. It's a good thing. But the last point that I wanted to bring up is like we went over a lot of aspect of content creators and their responsibilities, but another aspect that definitely is growing is like how far or what you're willing to do in terms of a content creator, and how are we going to go into in as a society and try to normalize it. So what I mean by that is, in terms of content creation nowadays, people are willing to kind of do anything for money. We went over the prank stuff or saying some crazy ludicrous stuff, but I want to go outside that in terms of the OnlyFans stuff, right? The porn stuff, right? The selling feet pics for money stuff. The A lot of these fields are becoming much more accepted in society, and as a result, what's going to happen is it's going to influence more people to do things that are similar if they think they're going to make a buck from it. Now, the whole discourse between, like, for example, when it came to OnlyFans back in the day, was, I think a lot of people knew that only a select few people can actually get famous from OnlyFans. But regardless of people knowing that can get like a lot of money from OnlyFans, a lot of people still were creating OnlyFans. I feel like most people that I see on Tinder nowadays has an OnlyFans. It's actually crazy. If you're trying to, you got a lot of them also have a look. And it's like, yeah, this girl probably has an OnlyFans. So in terms of content creation and what people are willing to do and how accepted more and more things are becoming in society, do we think this is a good thing for society? Do you think we should eventually find a point where it's like, okay, that's enough. We need to stop here. What do you think?
look, I think it's sad that people have to sell their bodies to make a buck, right? Because they feel so disillusioned with their own goals and that they don't do it. Obviously, a lot of them, I think, do it because it is easy money. It's something that you could do. I guess to bite the bullet on it, it is in like some form of way ethical, right? And I'm not going to be the guy to say, "Oh, it says a lot about society," right? But I'll say, like there's no labor really being produced like whatsoever in these cases. Like I don't really think sex work is work whatsoever. Do I think it should be like legalized to prevent more of these girls from being killed and stuff like that? Sure. For the OnlyFans stuff, look, that's the way you make your money. That's the way you make your money. But I guess in the bigger picture, I wish more people could pursue their goals and provide more to the country rather than commoditizing themselves. Right? Like we as individuals possess great strength and qualities that we can do to provide for the world, and boosting up like independent contractors to do this like style of income that, by the way, isn't always going to be the most sustainable. I don't think is the best option. I think that we should be empowering women to go into sciences, go into government jobs, go into like all these different industries that they're not already in. And I get that right now it's still pretty hard for them to get it and get a decent wage in the middle of it as well. But it's something that we should strive for. And I think that we should look at it with a little bit of a sour taste in our mouth, right? Not shame these girls, but definitely say, look, like we got to push forward more so we can have people not have to sell themselves in that capacity, but instead produce labor that actually benefits the nation, right? I'm a big fan of the state workforce, and it's just kind of disappointing to see a lot of these bright young women take this as an avenue. Granted, look, can I blame them in some situations? Like, look, I don't know. Would I do it if I was in their same shoes? Maybe, right? It's a lot of money, But at the same time, I also ask myself, I also answer the question. I'd say, yeah, probably not, right? There's plenty of things I could have done for significantly more money, and I haven't done it because it's simply something that I know that it's not what I'm going to always want to do for the rest of my life. I genuinely want to provide something to this world, provide something to this country in the form of political leadership and advisory. And I hope a lot of young women can also do the same, right? I hope that they can look themselves in the mirror and say, I'm more than just my body. I have this like brain, I have this mind, I have this thing that I can do to produce just so much greatness for the country. So that's the thing I'll say there. But look, if you're short on change, I'll say, I can't really blame you. Right. But if you're from like a well-off background, come on, you have great potential in yourself, and just at the very least, use it as a temporary avenue so you can embrace the original goals that you had as a kid. Uh, don't have that disillusionment that so many young people have today, and press on. So yeah, that's what I'll say on that.
Yeah, it's there's definitely some, sympathy you can have in certain situations, of course. And shout out to the guys that are also selling their body for money. Y'all could do other things too, right? So, with that said, the big thing between for this profession that are selling their body for money, or selling other parts of their body for money, the big thing behind this profession is just very similar to the content creation conversation we're having, is that it's very easy to do, right? In terms of making it, obviously that's hard. But in terms of doing it, it's very easy to do. Very similar to what I was speaking about before. So that ease, makes it natural in a way, especially when it's endorsed, to kind of lead into this if you feel like you have no other option. And that's another aspect about this conversation, is the endorsement aspect of the field, right? So because nowadays it's definitely being endorsed, right? It's being endorsed on social media. You have people, I'm sure you've seen the tweets where people are saying like, "Hey, there's actually like social media accounts that are posting about these women, so people go to their pages, right?" So they're being endorsed on social media. They're being endorsed in like social media events. For example, with the Misfits boxing stuff, where we have OnlyFans girls shouting out their OnlyFans at the interviews, and that one girl who took off her top and showed her boobs on the zone in front of everybody, basically endorsing her OnlyFans. So these individuals, and we have other content creators, other examples of content creators, are all individuals who don't are not technically the ones that you're talking about, Paul. They're technically the people who already kind of made it but are continuously down the path because the money is there. Because we see like women content creators that are now transforming or becoming OnlyFans or whatever they're becoming, right? And I remember this. I think I saw an interview. I forget which singer it was, but she was talking about how well, I won't say all, but that her friends and people around her was telling her, even though she was like already a successful musician, they were telling her to make an OnlyFans account to get more money. So there's a certain level of endorsement and like um appreciation for the profession, in addition to it being very easy to do, which is potentially concerning. What do you think about this other aspect of the people endorsing being these type of professions?
Look, people can consent to what they want to do. You could plug your favorite OnlyFans model if you like, right? And you could do all these things because you as a person have that right to do so. But I mean, look, man. uh, Once again, I don't know. You're not really getting out much out of it yourself, and doesn't seem like the best option. And for those trying to persuade others to get into it, yeah, that leaves a pretty bad taste in my mouth as well. Um, I don't know.
It's
Uh,
it's very
it hurt.
it's very it's a very tough thing, because the people who say you hear it anytime you kind of say something in protest of what a woman should do. They think you're taking their rights. That's how usually those conversations go. um and it's actually kind of it really kind of plays into overarching conversation we're talking about in terms of content creator responsibility. And as they have all this individuality, all this freedom, which this actually goes in another aspect, Paul, of the last podcast episode you weren't here for. Me and Jonathan were talking about freedom versus safety. The value of being free versus the value of being safe in society. And we're going through all these different perspectives because they kind of push and pull against each other. And as of right now, being a content creator is probably the most free job you can have. But on the flip side, the damage it can cause arguably is probably the most damage, without, especially since it has very little check, of like any profession. Obviously not counting like people in the military that are killing millions of people, but in terms of like a profession of people who influence people, it probably could be that in politicians be one of the most damaging job that you can have currently in society. Um and I guess the last thing before we wrap things up, do you think it's worth us as a society taking away some of the freedom, the authenticity, if it's in the betterment of society as a whole?
Do I think that it's better to take away some freedoms for the better society as a whole? You said.
For content creators, taking away their freedom and authenticity if it's in the betterment of society as a whole.
Um, yeah, I mean, I usually strive for pieces of legislation like that. It's just that, it granted, I don't think it has that big of an impact on society, aside from that of these like far right types that are like, indoctrinating young men. Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, that is basically all we got today in terms of today's discussion regarding content creators. It's a conversation and discussion I wanted to have because I feel like there's not many people talking about the individual responsibilities that content creators have and their impact is currently and moving forward. They influence a lot of people, a lot of young people, and it doesn't seem, in my opinion, at the very least, that any of these content creators are really trying to be the role models that they automatically are, and making sure they're putting certain checks and certain barriers in place to ensure that the public's being influenced by them are doing the best they can for society versus just copying them and doing the negative, potentially negative actions, or say the negative things, or going negative professions that they may be in currently. It's kind of saying, oh, be like me is what it looks like. And obviously, you don't want everybody to be like the content creators that currently exist in society. So let me know what you guys think per usual. Of course, leave a 5 stars on Apple Podcast, Spotify. We are here every Monday and Thursday, 8 a.m. EST, to see the show's audio. And if you want to catch up us with us live, you can show up to the live shows at 8 p.m. EST as we continue to have some great conversations. Any last words, Paul?
The last thing I'll say is, to, like any of the young people watching or parents, right? Continually pursue those goals that you have before you and never really give up on them. I know you hear it all the time, but there are thousands of young people every day, probably millions, that feel disillusioned and feel as if they can't do it. But you can. You could take some wit. You're gonna have to do that Protestant work ethic thing of pulling yourself up, right? But this is something that you can straddle and really make a change in your life to do and never give up on it. This is something that's deeply worth it. It will give you happiness and a sense of meaning in a lot of cases. And furthermore, in a lot of cases, you'll provide to the world something that many others can't provide. So continue pushing on, get into those extracurriculars, get your kids into those extracurriculars, keep them off the street, and keep them motivated and tell them that you love them. And that's all I got to say.
All right, excellent. Well, hope you guys enjoyed per usual. Y'all have a good one. Take care.